Hi everyone, welcome back to another Planetarium live stream. My name is Jessica, I am the director of the Planetarium, and with me today are two probably familiar faces who I will let introduce themselves, and we will start with Eli on my left.
Hi, I'm Eli. I'm a physics undergraduate student at UMD.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm a physics graduate student at UMD.
So tonight we have our monthly Constellation Star Show, where we're going to tell you about what constellations and stars you can find up in the sky during the month of September, and also tell you some of the stories behind them. I'm really blending into my background tonight. I don't know why I keep doing that. Anyway, so I'm going to jump on over to the program we're going to use. While I am getting things set up, if anyone has any questions throughout the show tonight, feel free to leave them down in the comments. Eli will be watching those for us and will let us know when we end up with any questions. So, to get started tonight, I am using a program called Stellarium. This is actually a free program that you can download and play around with for yourself. It's really great. You can put in any location, date, or time, and it'll show you what the sky looks like. It's especially great if you're trying to kind of learn how to navigate the night sky. And so we're going to take you on a tour of that tonight. So we are currently set up for Duluth at our current time. And so we can see the sun is starting to get low, but it's not quite set. And so I'm just going to speed up time here until the sun has set. There we go. Maybe go a little bit further, just so we can get it fully set. All right. Now, before we get started with any constellations, the first thing I actually want to point out is something you can find over in the south. So really easy right out of the bat, as the sun sets and it starts getting dark, if you look south, you'll start seeing a really bright point of light. And that is actually not a star, that is the planet Jupiter. It is incredibly bright and should actually be the first thing you see once it starts getting dark, because it's brighter than all of the other stars in the sky. And then once it does get dark, just to the left of it, you should see another point of light that is going to be a little bit fainter. It's more of an average brightness, or the brightness of your average star, but that is no star. That is the planet Saturn. So right off the bat, as it starts getting dark, look south and you'll be able to see two planets up in the sky. All right, let's turn our way back north. And we are going to get started with a pretty familiar object to most people. It is this group of 7 stars that is known as the Big Dipper. And so we have the handle and the cup of the Dipper. Now, I have to tell you, the Big Dipper is actually not a constellation. It's an asterism. So it's a smaller grouping of stars within a larger constellation. And in this case, these 7 stars happen to be the brightest stars in the constellation of Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. And so to see the bear, we're going to add on some more stars. Our handle here is going to turn into the tail of the bear. And then here's the back, ear, nose, chest, front legs, belly, and back legs. And so I'll do that one more time. We have the tail, back, ear, nose, chest, front legs, belly, and back legs. This time of year, our big bear is kind of walking along our northwest horizon. So our big bear is not the only bear that we have in the sky. We also have a little bear, Ursa Minor. And to help us find our little bear, which is also our Little Dipper, we're actually going to use the Big Dipper to help us. You'll notice tonight that we use the Big Dipper to help find quite a lot of things in the sky. And one of the reasons for that is because of how bright it is. It's very easy to find, even with some light polluted skies. And so it serves as a great kind of starting off point. If you can find it and learn a few tricks on how to use it to find some other things, then you've made a great start in navigating the sky. And so for our jump over to our little bear, what we're going to do is take these front two stars in the cup of the Big Dipper, and we're going to connect them in a line. And these two stars are known as the pointer stars, because when we follow the line that they make, they point us to Polaris, the North Star right here. So Polaris is a pretty special star. Obviously, it's given the nickname of the North Star. And a lot of people think that it's special because it is the brightest star in the sky, and that's actually not the case. The brightest star in the sky is the star Sirius, which is up in the winter. We can show you that once that comes up in a few months. But the reason it's special is because it is the only star in the sky that doesn't move. So if I speed up time here just a little bit, you'll see all of these other stars are moving except for the North Star here. And let me just cheat and go backwards just a little bit, so we're back to where we started. But yeah, so it's the only star that doesn't move, and so it always stays in the same point, same place. And early navigators learned that and used that they could use the star to figure out what direction north was, because that star would always be there and always be in the direction north. And of course, once you know north, you know your other directions, and so it's famous for its navigational use. But Polaris here is at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper, and so we have the Little Dipper right here with its handle and cup. The Little Dipper, as you can see, the stars are not nearly as bright as the stars of the Big Dipper, so it's a lot harder to find. If you go out at night and you see a dipper, chances are it's the Big Dipper. And if you're struggling to find the Little Dipper, that is perfectly normal, because you have to have some pretty dark skies to be able to see the entire Little Dipper. Usually you'll just see Polaris and these front stars of the cup of the Little Dipper. But our Little Dipper is also Ursa Minor, or Little Bear. And so to turn this into a bear, we're going to turn its handle again into the tail. And then here's the little bear body. We have back legs, back, front legs, and head. Definitely doesn't look much like a bear. I think it looks more like a squirrel with that long tail and super little body. But our big bear also has the same kind of curiously long tail for a bear. And these two constellations are Greek. They were created by ancient Greek astronomers, well, maybe not astronomers, but the ancient Greek culture. And there's this joke that we like to say that, you know, the Greeks obviously didn't know what bears looked like because they gave them these long tails, but that's not the case. The Greeks, like many other cultures, use the patterns in the stars to tell stories. And in this case, they have a story about these two bears that are in the sky, and the story explains why these bears have such long tails. And so to get started with our story, we are going to introduce kind of the main character, who is Zeus, the king of the Greek gods. And Zeus has this really bad habit of leaving his home on Mount Olympus, coming down to Earth, and making a lot of friends down on Earth. And he has a habit of making a lot of friends with other women. And this makes his wife, Hera, who is another goddess, jealous. She doesn't like her husband making a lot of friends with other girls. And so one day, Hera gets completely fed up with this. Because Zeus has made yet another friend, this time with a woman named Callisto. And Hera decides to get back at him by turning his new friend Callisto into a bear, and then drags Zeus back home to Mount Olympus. Well, what they didn't realize is Callisto had a son named Argus. And when his mom didn't come home, he started to get worried, and so he goes out searching for her. And in his search, he comes across this big, beautiful bear in the woods. And he readies his weapon because it's a bear. And he doesn't realize that this bear is his mother. Well, Zeus happens to be checking in to see how Callisto's doing because, he feels bad and he wants to make sure she's okay. And he sees Arcus, sees what's about to happen, and so he rushes down to Earth and decides that the best way to solve this situation is to turn Arcus into a bear as well. And learning that this is Callisto's son and that they're now both bears, what he decides to do is to put them up in the sky so that they can live together as bears among the stars. And so to get them up there, he had to pick them up by their bear tails, spin them around, and fling them up into the sky. And that process of being spun and flung is what stretched out their bear tails here. And so that's why our two bears have such long tails. And our big bear here is our mama bear, Callisto. And our little bear here is her son, Argus. All right, so moving on from here, let me turn these names back off real quick. We can use the Big Dipper once again to help us find our next set of constellations. And so we're going to take those two pointer stars again, and this time we're going to go past Polaris and keep going over until we reach this big W in the sky. This big W is actually a queen named Cassiopeia. And so you kind of have to picture her as if she's sitting in a throne and we're getting kind of a sideways view of her. And so here is her head, her back, upper legs, lower legs, and then big long feet. She's kind of got clown feet. But no one's allowed to make fun of that because she's a queen and she doesn't allow it. Now, our Queen Cassiopeia also has her king up in the sky with her. If we look at our kind of W here and look kind of up and to the left a little bit, we'll see what looks like a square with a triangle attached to it. Or maybe like a house, very poorly drawn house that's upside down. Or maybe a house that I would draw because I have zero artistic talent. But this is the throne of King Cepheus, and he's upside down right now, and so his head is here, and then his body would be sitting here with arms and legs. Now, our queen and king are up in the sky for very different reasons. And Eli is going to tell us about this story, but before I hand it over to him, there are a few other players that I have to introduce you to that are going to be in this story. And so our king and queen, Cassiopeia and Cepheus, have a daughter. And so to find the daughter, we're going to once again use the W of Cassiopeia. And this time we're going to take these kind of top portion of the W, which is going to act like an arrow, to point us to this kind of V shape of stars, or sideways V shape, and this is Andromeda, the princess, their daughter. And so we have her head, her arms are kind of outstretched this way, and then her legs come down here. Now if we go south from Cassiopeia, we reach this little grouping of stars right here, and this is Perseus. And so we have head, body, legs, and his arm is outstretched here because he's actually holding on to the head of Medusa, which is kind of his claim to fame. He's the guy who killed Medusa. And our last character, if we hop back over kind of towards the east, we find Perseus's great flying steed, which you may know of as the famous winged horse Pegasus. And let me tell you, Pegasus's constellation is something else. All right, so I'm going to draw it out for you guys. We start with this star, then this one, 3, 4, oops, didn't mean to click that star, and back to the first. Yep, it's a square. Our great winged horse is a giant square in the sky. Really goes to show you that constellations, more often than not, don't look like they're supposed to. I'm not sure how you get a winged horse from a square, but it does make for a fabulous story and definitely is, at least I know mine and Lindsay's, one of our favorite constellations to point out. So there are all of our players. Just once again, the W of our Queen Cassiopeia, our upside down house of King Cepheus, their daughter, the Princess Andromeda, with her arms outstretched, Perseus, and his flying horse, Pegasus. And so with that, I'm going to hand the reins over to Eli, who's going to tell us the story of all of these characters.
Yeah, so the story starts with Cassiopeia and Cepheus, who long ago were the rulers of what is now known as Ethiopia. And they had this beautiful, beautiful daughter, Andromeda, just the most beautiful woman in all the land, nothing compared. And they liked to brag about it a lot. They were not shy. They liked to tell stories of their daughter's beauty all the time. And one particular night, they were having a bunch of people over, a party in their kingdom, I suppose. And they were talking, and Cassiopeia went as far as saying that Andromeda is more beautiful than the gods and goddesses, excuse me, in on Mount Olympus. So obviously the gods were not happy about that, and not too soon after, they heard a knock knock on their door, and it was Hermes coming down to say that everybody was pretty displeased with Cassiopeia and Cepheus for saying that. And they decided that their best plan of action was to sacrifice their beautiful daughter, Andromeda, to appease the gods that were so upset at them, so that they could maintain peace in their land and nothing bad would happen. And they ended up doing that. They took Andromeda and they chained her to a rock out in the ocean, and they waited for a sea monster to come get her. But luckily for Andromeda, the hero Perseus was flying overhead on his trusty square steed Pegasus, and he had the new trophy of the head of Medusa. And something really interesting that I like to talk about with the head of Medusa in Perseus's hand is one of the eyes of the head, the star named Algol, or Beta Persei, I think, is a binary star. So it's two stars that go around each other, and that means that it varies in brightness. I think it's every 4 years is like how off or how long the cycle takes. So it gets really bright and then dims down really bright. And the Greeks noticed this, and they said that that was because that was Medusa's eye blinking, which is kind of morbid, but I think it's kind of cool to talk about that. They noticed this binary star and obviously didn't know what it was, but they still crafted a story around it. So Perseus is flying overhead, and he hears Andromeda's cries for help as the sea monster is coming towards her, and he decides that he has two options. He can either go down and try to unchain Andromeda, which might result in them both becoming sea monster lunch, or he can try to fight the sea monster, but that thing was really big and he didn't think he could take it. So he did some quick thinking, and he realized that he could take Medusa's head, and we all know what happens when you look at Medusa, you turn to stone. He realized that he could take Medusa's head and face it out towards the ocean and turn the sea monster to stone. So he did it, and it worked. The sea monster turned to stone, sank to the bottom of the ocean, and Perseus, Andromeda, and Pegasus lived on happily ever after. So there's the story.
Yeah. And our king and queen did not get off scot-free, though. They never got their punishment from the gods, and so they ended up coming up with a new punishment and placed them up into the sky, but oriented so that they could never look at each other ever again, which is why Cepheus is kind of facing outward, looking at us, and Cassiopeia, her head is here and is looking down. So in this case, they were put up as a punishment rather than as a, I guess, apology or gift like our bears were. Now, over in this area of sky is another wonderful object to see with your eyes. So if you go back to our W of Cassiopeia, and we take those same kind of 3 stars to make our arrow. As we're kind of pointing towards the constellation of Andromeda, we also go past this little fuzzy object right here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. This fuzzy object is a galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, named because it's in the constellation of Andromeda. And this is something you can see with your naked eye without a telescope. In fact, it is the furthest thing that we can see with our naked eye, an entirely separate galaxy. And this galaxy is just like ours, a nice barred spiral galaxy, or spiral galaxy. I'm actually not sure if Andromeda has a bar, now that I've said that out loud. But it's a spiral galaxy, and is heading towards us. So in about 5 billion years or so, they're gonna, our Milky Way galaxy and Andromeda are going to collide. But it's not going to be like a giant train wreck that you might think of, because galaxies are mostly empty space. And so most of the stars and stuff are just going to pass right by each other. And instead, what's actually going to happen is possibly a lot of new stars being born, because the gas that is in these galaxies is going to collide. And as they collide, that's going to trigger new stars being born. And so this galaxy collision is actually going to result in a lot of new stars. And I think it's going to be really cool to see. Unfortunately, we don't have a way yet for me to live to be 5 billion years old. So yeah, we're just going to have to wait and see if technology catches up, because I'd like to see that. All right, so if we turn back over to the northwest, where we found our Big Dipper and our Big Bear, we're going to use our Big Dipper once again to make some more star hops. And so we are going to, this time, use the handle of the Big Dipper, and we're going to follow the arc of the handle to this bright star that's currently right in the west, named Arcturus. And so we arc to Arcturus. Now, Arcturus is in the constellation of Bootes. It's this kind of kite-looking constellation. I think it looks like an ice cream cone, right? You got cone and the scoop of ice cream there. But this is supposed to be a bear herder. So again, gotta use your imagination a little bit to see it. But the star Arcturus has some really great stories about it that come not from the Greeks. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay, who's going to tell us a story about the star Arcturus.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite stories. It comes from the Lumi Native American tribe. So Coyote, in many Native American stories, is kind of a troublemaker. Well, anyway, he was out walking around one day, and he happened to spot some very pretty ladies, and he wanted to impress them. So he decided to impress the ladies, he would take out his eyeballs and juggle them. And he's trying to be super impressive, and so he keeps throwing his eyeballs higher and higher as he's juggling them. And he accidentally throws one of his eyeballs so high it lands right in the sky. So then he had to walk around with only one eyeball after that.
Yep, and so Arcturus is our coyote's eyeball. I love that story. It's one of my favorites. I think that one and the snowy bear, which we tell in the summer. Oh, I love it. So sitting right next to our ice cream cone kite bear herder coyote eyeball is this kind of U-shaped group of stars. This is the Corona Borealis, the northern crown. And our crown here can actually help us find our next constellation, which is Hercules. Now, there are some tricks people tell of how to find Hercules. A lot of times it's looking for the keystone of Hercules. But I have a trick that Lindsay taught me that I think works a lot better. And so what we want to do is take this crown and actually turn it into a spoon, which is part of why I like this being an ice cream cone, because it makes sense why we would want a spoon. But in order to do that, we have to attach a few more stars to it in order for us to have a spoon here. And when we have attached these extra stars, what we've actually done is found the belt of Hercules, because these two stars that help make up the handle of our spoon are the belt of Hercules. And so here is his whole body, and then we have some legs and some arms. He's you can either picture he's flailing across the sky, or as a school group we had come in have decided that he's not flailing, he's actually doing some awesome ninja rolls across the sky. And so that makes it sound a little bit better than flailing. But let's see, we're getting a little close on time, so I think we will head on to our next kind of constellations that are up in the southern sky. And so to reorient us, we have our Big Dipper, we've arced over to Arcturus, where we have our crown / ice cream spoon, and Hercules. Now looking over in the kind of south-southwest, we can really see this cloudy kind of streak coming up from the horizon, and it actually arches overhead and goes back down into the kind of northeast. And this kind of cloud is actually our Milky Way galaxy. That's what we're seeing. It's shaped like a disc, like a pancake, and we're sitting right in the middle of it. And so when we look into our galaxy, we're seeing the light from hundreds of billions of stars that are too far away for us to see as pinpoints. And so all of that light blends together and gives this kind of cloudy haze. We also see dark streaks, and that's a lot of the gas that we've talked about, or I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of gas clouds, and that blocks light, and so we end up with some dark streaks. But in particular, in the summer, we are actually looking right into the center of our galaxy. This is the direction of the center. And so there is a lot of stuff over here. If you have a telescope, this is one really great spot to look, because you're going to see a lot of really pretty star clusters and gas clouds called nebulae. There's a lot of really great stuff over here to look at. So yeah, that's an area of interest. But this is also home to another constellation that looks a little bit different than it should. And so looking over in the south, what we want to look for is the teapot. And so we can see the teapot right here, right? We have the kind of kettle, we have the handle, the top, the spout, and in fact the Milky Way is kind of like steam coming out of it. Well, this tea kettle is actually Sagittarius, who is a half-man, half-horse archer. Yeah, I'm, again, not quite sure how we get that out of a teapot, so just use your imagination. But there is Sagittarius. Now, looking kind of past Sagittarius, again, that is where Jupiter and Saturn are sitting. But if we keep looking over, we're going to see this kind of lopsided triangle. Now, Eli does not like this region of sky because I had to bring it up. I'm sorry. Because to Eli, this weird triangle plus a couple of bright stars looks like a menacing snarl. I think that's the way you put it, Eli, right?
Yeah, it always well, maybe there's a scary movie that it reminds me of a character from, and I always get shudders whenever I see it because it reminds me of the movie. So
well, this squished triangle is actually the constellation of Capricorn, or Capricornus, who is half goat, half fish. And so the end of the triangle here is kind of his fishtail, and then we have his little goat head and front goat legs. Lindsay, did you want to tell the story? We don't have a lot of time, or I can just show Aquarius real quick.
Yeah, I can do the story.
Okay.
So, at one point, Capricorn was all goat. He was the goat god Pan, and he was trying to run away from a monster named Typhon, and he wasn't losing him. Like he kept trying to get run and run so that the monster would get tired, but the monster wasn't getting tired. So he tried to jump into the ocean to swim away from the monster, but the monster even followed him there. And so Zeus turns the backside of Pan into a fish tail to help him get away from the monster finally.
Yep, that's an interesting story. I still think it's kind of a great amalgamation, I guess. Half goat, half fish. That's, yeah, very imaginative. Now, we can use the fish tail of Capricorn to point us to our next constellation, because the fish tail can act as kind of an arrow to point us to the kind of hips of Aquarius. And so he's kind of kneeling. So here's like one leg bent, knee on the ground, and then the other leg. We have his body and his head, and he is holding a pitcher of water because he is the water bearer for the gods. And so with that, we have pretty much made our way around the sky, as you would see not too long after sunset. Now, of course, if you want to stay outside even longer, the Earth is going to rotate, the sky is going to turn, the stars are going to move, and you're going to start seeing new things rising up in the east and stars setting down in the west. We're not having to wait too long before the winter sky starts peeking its head up over the horizon, because winter is right around the corner, folks. And then as we keep going, the sun's going to rise up over in the east, and we are back to another day. So, with that, we have concluded our September constellation show. Lots of good things to find up. Again, definitely try and start with the Big Dipper and the Big W of Cassiopeia. Those are the two kind of easiest to find right off the bat. They're very big, very bright, very easy to point out. And then you can use some of the tips we've taught you tonight to help you navigate around and find some of the other stuff. Again, Stellarium is free to download if you want to use it to kind of learn the night sky for yourself. We've also linked to a place where you can print off your own star chart. And you can take that out with you, and that can help you navigate the sky as well. Or there's also lots of great phone apps that use your GPS, so you can just hold the phone up and it'll show you what's there. So lots of ways to learn your way around the sky. I would say it definitely comes with practice. I mean, I don't think any of us innately knew right away everything, but after doing lots of these shows, we've learned. And so just go out, have fun, try it, do it, you'll learn it with time. But yeah, that is it. Did we have any questions or things come in?
Nope, no questions. Just got a "this was cool, thank you" from Robert Fairbrother.
Oh, well, we're glad you enjoyed it. If you do have any questions, now is a great time to ask them. And while I give it a few minutes to see if any questions are coming in, let me give you a heads up of what's coming up over the next few weeks. So next week on Wednesday, we are going to be doing a show all about planets around other stars. So how it is we found them, how many there are, some of the wacky ones we have found so far. It's a pretty cool show. It's a topic I love talking about. And then next Saturday, Lindsay is going to be teaching us about some of the women who made significant contributions to the field of astronomy, many of which do not get the credit they deserve. So she's going to tell us all about them. There's some really cool women in there, lots of great stories. And then coming up on September 26th, we are going to be launching what we hope to call our kind of monthly Stellar Saturday, where we unfortunately won't be opening the planetarium itself, But out in front of the planetarium, we will have lots of fun things set up. Our goal is to hand out some little mini activity kits for you to take home and do some things, some fun science and astronomy things. We'd also hope to have maybe one little mini activity that can be done. There's some things we're still working out as far as exactly what's going to be offered. We want to make sure to keep ourselves and, of course, all of you safe at this event. And so we're working very carefully to make sure we have a good balance of fun stuff, but also safe stuff. But that is coming up on September 26th from 1 to 3, our first Stellar Saturday. This one is going to be themed around our moon because September 26th is International Observe the Moon Night. And so we'll also be having a telescope stream that night, all on the moon. And so we'll have that on Facebook Live as well. So yeah, that's what's coming up this month. We're excited to be getting back out and doing some things face-to-face and not only virtual. And we thought that this could be a fun way to kind of start opening back up, start doing some things. And we're excited to be back out doing activities and such. We'll have more details about the Stellar Saturday as we get a little bit closer as far as exactly what sort of activities and stuff you can pick up. But we're excited for it. So yeah, anything?
Nope, no question.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening and a wonderful weekend, and we hope to see you again next time. So bye everyone.